Hello, good evening. My name is Rion, and I'll be talking about PLSQL and how it's used and how the cursors in the PSQL are used. Now, this is the data set. This is the create table and the drop table and all the insert commands I've incorporated in this notepad. It's titled SQL codes, my code. So this is the entire data set. The values, which creates the table and the database. Alright, now let's look at the question which uses cursor in PLSQL. Alright, now this is the program that we're going to run, and over here you see clear screen, which clears the screen, set server output on size, and then you give a value of 1 and 6 zeros. Alright, now you need a log table because we're using a log table over here to log the activities going on over here. So drop table delete newspaper log. This is one table. We're dropping this in case it is there previously as we run before, so we don't need any clashes, so that's why we're dropping this first. Then create table delete newspaper log. We're creating it again, starting from fresh, and these are the attributes present in the table. Now we create procedure called remove newspaper as cursor newspaper is, and so forth. And over here in this cursor what we do is we select the newspaper ID name and annual turnover from the table newspaper and order it by name, ascending order of the name of the newspaper, and we use it for update. And what this cursor does in PLSQL is that it's a form of loop, kind of a loop. It goes through each row one by one, and each row is processed. Now PLSQL is very different from SQL. Now this is like actually a procedure where you actually have a Python or C, or it has a it has a structure where you actually retrieve or manipulate the data. It has a structure. It's not like SQL as you know. It incorporates SQL, but not exactly the same. Let's begin. Now these are the variables where we store the individual values. All right. Begin, and this is just the output statement. List all the newspaper companies ordered by their names. Okay, now we open the cursor. Newspaper cur is the name of the cursor, and then we loop. We fetch each row. Fetch newspaper cur into v newspaper rec. Now v newspaper rec only has one row. Right? This consists of the first row, for example, for now. And after each loop it goes in the second row, third row, and fourth row, and so on. Now over here exit when newspaper cur not found. When there's not any more row, that's when it exits. Alright, now over here what we do is NVL. We select the count of journalists that are present in this newspaper company or the newspaper. So in this question, what we're basically trying to do is we see if there are any journalists in the newspaper. If there aren't any journalists in the newspaper, we remove that newspaper from the database. All right, now this checks the number of journalists and stores it in vCount journalists, checks the number of journalists in the newspaper, and we check it using this where journalist.newspaper_id is equal to newspaper.newspaper_id. Newspaper ID over here, journalist.newspaper_id is the foreign key for the table journalist. And newspaper ID over here is the primary key for the table newspaper. And again, we display the output over here, whatever we get for each variable. For newspaper rec, now we know that the newspaper rec is newspaper record, so each row will have the newspaper name, will have the annual turnover, it'll have uh, it'll have many others that we stored over here. But over here next we output the count of journalists which we find through this command, the nvl count command. Alright, now we choose the if else if statements. Now if the week count journalist is equal to 0, if there are no journalists in the newspaper company, then we output the newspaper company name. It says newspaper company so and so will be deleted. And then delete from newspaper where current of newspaper curve. Now, as I mentioned before, it goes on a loop, right? It's always on the flow. So we need to tell the system which one to delete. So that's why current. Delete the current of newspaper cur. Delete the current of the cursor newspaper cur. And then we increment the count where we count deleted newspaper equal to we count deleted newspaper plus 1. So we get the number of newspapers that are deleted, removed from the database. Or if there is, if there are journalists in every newspaper out there, then newspaper company, the name of the newspaper company, will get a turnover increase. So the newspaper company over here will have an annual turnover, right? The table, it shows in the table, it has an attribute called annual turnover. Let me show you. Show it to you. All right, now journalist, sorry, newspaper. We're going to newspaper. Newspaper. All right, so annual turnover over here. Right. And we update the newspaper and annual turnover, we increase it by 15,000. And where do we increase it? Current of newspaper curve. Alright, now again, similar to last time, in the if statement, we find the count of the deleted newspapers. Over here, we find the count of the increased, turnovers, the number of newspapers where the turnover is increased. And we add this into the log file where we say, okay, we updated the newspaper record over here by the user, that is us, and sysdate, the system date when we updated it. Alright, now that's the log file. Now we end the loop over here, we close the cursor, and then we output all the functions. Alright, now we run all this. The SQL says procedure created, no error shown. Suppose there are errors shown, you need to configure, or you need to debug it, and you need to see where the error lies, and then you have to proceed, right? Alright, now this is the output we get right over here. And it says execute newspaper, a list of all the newspaper companies, and you see the newspaper company alpha will get a turnover increase, and the names, the newspaper, and the the number of journalists employed, and then it goes on to a list of number of newspaper that gets increased. That's about it. And you see when you choose a select from select star from deleted newspaper log, that's the log file, you get the newspaper IDs, the username, that is my username, and the execution date. Right? That's about it for PLSQL. Stay tuned for more. Thank you.